God cannot be charged with evil, but his sovereignty is so all-encompassing that even evil serves the good purposes of God. This morning, Pastor Bartlett continues to explain clearly and simply and think on these things.
Of course, the greatest illustration of the way in which sinful acts may work together for the good of others is in the culmination of all evil which poured itself out against Jesus Christ, the sinless Son of God, and thereby work together for the eternal good of all who are saved in the redemption which resulted from his crucifixion. In Acts 2:22-23, Peter, preaching on the day of Pentecost, said, "Ye men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man approved of God among you by miracles and wonders and signs, which God did by him in the midst of you, as ye yourselves also know. Him being delivered by the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God, ye have taken, and by wicked hands have crucified and slain." Peter informs us that Jesus Christ's death was according to the determinate counsel, or the prearranged plan, and the foreknowledge of God. It was God's will that Jesus Christ should be crucified in order to provide an atonement for sinners. Our Lord was betrayed. He was falsely accused. He was unjustifiably condemned and executed. These were all sinful actions, and we know that God does not and cannot condone sin. Yet, these sinful actions had to be carried out in order for God's will to be accomplished. All the sinful actions that were perpetrated in order for God's plan concerning the death of his Son to be accomplished involved the instrumentality of the devil, but yet it was all the ordained plan of God. The truth is that our salvation could not have been accomplished unless wicked men had committed sin. The sins of these men was worked together for good by God in order to save us. In Acts 4:26-28, we read the following. The kings of the earth stood up, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ. For of a truth, against thy holy child Jesus, whom thou hast anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate with the Gentiles and the people of Israel were gathered together for to do whatsoever thy hand and thy counsel determined before to be done. Here we are informed that Herod Antipas, Pontius Pilate, the Roman soldiers, and even the Jewish people all united in the sinful execution of Jesus Christ. Yet their sinful actions served the purposes of a sovereign God who had before determined that these sinful actions be performed in order to provide salvation for his elect. We are very certain that the awful death of Jesus Christ was the perfect will of God, for the prophet Isaiah wrote in Isaiah 53:10, "Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief." The will of God was directly involved in the events that led to the death of his Son. Yet that death could not have come to pass without the sinful intervention of human beings. Satan meant the death of Christ as his ultimate act of rebellion and defiance. but God turned it into salvation from sin, and through that death took multitudes from the kingdom of Satan into the kingdom of his Son. Human beings meant it as the final gesture of the enmity which the carnal mind holds against God. But God turned the fruit of that very hatred into the plan of salvation, which showed his love to the universe and made it possible for us to become the sons of God. Clearly then, God is able to so work things together that the sins of other persons may ultimately be beneficial for us. But can something that affects my life as the result of my own sin work together for my good? Let us turn to the story of Joseph and his brothers for an illustration. Joseph's brothers were very jealous of him. He had, perhaps unwisely, told them of his dreams, which clearly indicated that he would have the preeminence over them one day. They became upset at the thought of their father and mother, and they themselves bowing down before him and serving him. In the process of time, they conspired against him, and after plotting his death, sold him into the hands of the Midianites, who took him into Egypt. After being sold as a slave to Potiphar, the captain of the guard, the lustful fury of Potiphar's wife, whose adulterous advances Joseph steadfastly resisted, caused him to be arrested and thrown into prison. Finally, the forgetfulness of the Pharaoh's butler, whom he befriended, doomed him to years of wasting away in the dungeon. Suddenly, however, we see God's hand in all of this, and we find Joseph delivered from prison, exalted to being the prime minister of Egypt, and in charge of all the economy of that land. Soon the riches of the nation were in his hand, and the famine which followed forced the Jews to come down under the patriarch Jacob and live in the land of Egypt in great prosperity. God had promised to make of this family a nation, and what better way to form them into a people than to take them out from the alien tribes which surrounded them and bring them into a place of protected plenty, where 4 centuries could pass upon them and see them grow to power and strength. Now, it is easy to see that the evil actions of the sons of Jacob worked together for the good of Joseph and Jacob, and for the good of the wives and children of the murderous brothers. When Joseph made himself known to his brothers, he said to them, "Come near to me, I pray you." And they came near. And he said, "I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be airing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." Genesis 45, 4-8. Years later, when Jacob their father had died, the brothers were seized with terror as they thought of themselves without their father. They supposed that the presence of Jacob had kept back the merited wrath of Joseph, And now that the patriarch was dead, their brother might deal harshly with them. But listen to Joseph once again. Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. Genesis 15:19 to 21. We can apply this whole story to show how evil perpetrated by wicked persons can bring good to God's people. But this example shows that the evil of these brothers ultimately saved their own lives.
There's no doubt we'll face hardships today, and if not today, then certainly tomorrow. Let these truths wash over your mind and bring you perspective as you rise to meet the day. Until next time, think on these things.